Hello, my name is Darren Thomas, and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to take a look at different types of speaking activities or techniques that you can use in a language learning classroom with your ESL students. So let's go ahead and see what we can learn. So we're going to focus on 5 types, and these are basically in an order from the easiest level to the hardest level. And so we start with imitative, intensive, moving to responsive, interactive, and finally extensive. So imitative, as you can see in that picture in the lower right hand corner, is just, repeating what is said. Parrots know how to talk, and basically at the imitative level, the student is parroting what the teacher says. So you can see the example on the screen. The teacher says dog, the student says dog. And one thing to remember at this point, because sometimes students and teachers struggle with this, is comprehension is not required. So in other words, the student does not need to understand what they're saying. This is often very frustrating for adult students who want to understand everything, and is often, frustrating for the teacher who wants their students to understand everything. But remember that right now we're just focused on speaking, and we're dealing with people who are at the beginning of their language career in English. And so we have to kind of scale things back and put comprehension to the side, at least temporarily. We just want them to practice pronouncing and enunciating things in English and adding in the comprehension later on. The next level, if you will, is called intensive. And this is where the student is producing a limited amount of text. So if you look again off to the example here in the lower right hand corner, reading aloud is an excellent way to help students to develop their speaking skills. So you can see that sometimes with language learning, you have to blend skills and do them simultaneously. So reading is a skill, and then reading aloud is allowing them to work on their reading and their speaking skills at the same time. Another way that intensive activities can be included could be also direct response. They might answer yes or no, or give a very, very short, simple answer. Again, this is allowing them to practice their speaking at whatever particular level they're at that moment. Next, we have responsive, and the difference between responsive and intensive is really fuzzy, but it's kind of considered a higher level of intensive, if you will. So a little bit more complicated. How much is going to depend on the context of the ability of the student and of what the teacher is comfortable dealing with. And so an example of responsive might be a more advanced Q&A. So maybe not just answering yes or no, but going a little bit richer, providing some explanation if you want. So just keep in mind that when you're getting to responsive, it's kind of fuzzy, but it's a little bit more complicated than, say, direct response at the intensive level. Next, we have interactive. And interactive is primarily focused on interpersonal communication rather than transactional. So transactional is like, okay, where's the bathroom? Down the hall to the left. Interactive might be more like, how are you? How was your day? As an example. So when we're talking about interpersonal communication, we're looking at ways to maintain relationships. Checking with people on an emotional level, which is much more difficult to do than trying to get just information out of them. Like, how much is this food? Or what is the price for this shirt? That's more transactional. Again, like I said, when you're dealing with interpersonal, you're asking about how they feel, what they're doing, their job, things of that nature. Also, at this level of interactive communication, you're trying to read the context of what they're saying. So sometimes we call that pragmatics. The tone, the setting, the background information, how it was said, the body language, etc. like that. These are all things that kind of take in the context, the age of the person talking, the age of the person listening, etc. And so again, it's that ability to go a little bit deeper where it's not just the speaking, but the overall setting or environment in which the speaking is taking place. And if you've ever had to go into another context or another part of the world and speak a different language, you know that this is where you really start messing up when you're trying to communicate. because you're not able to read the situation properly because you don't have the appropriate cultural lens. And the last level, or you could say the highest level at which we can do speaking with our language learning students, is extensive. And actually, this really involves a monologue. So it's not so much when you're talking to another person, it's when you're basically talking to yourself, giving a presentation where you have to provide all the context and all the explanation of the story or the information that you're trying to share. So doing a presentation, getting up in front of a group of people and speaking by yourself is often considered one of the most difficult things to do for a language learner, because like I just said, you're providing everything yourself. And so at least when you're having a conversation at one of the lower levels, whether it's extensive or responsive or whatever, there's a back and forth, almost like, tennis. One person hits, one person serves, the other person hits it back, and there's a back and forth. But here you're up there all by yourself, sharing and providing everything, and that can be very difficult for students. Very, very difficult. And so this is why it's often considered, one of the highest levels of speaking within the context of ESL. So in conclusion, in this particular video, we were focused on looking at how you can bring different levels of speaking into the ESL classroom. So there are 5 levels, or you can call them activities or techniques, whatever makes you comfortable: imitative, intensive, responsive, interactive, and extensive. You want to move your students through all of these levels and use each of them as appropriate within your classroom. So I want to thank you again for watching and listening. My name is Darren Thomas. I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Take care.